Now we have Eason top 10 picks of crime series to get you hooked. Starting off with The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. This is the first of the trilogy by Stieg Larsson, and in this we meet Michael Blomkvist, who is a journalist, and he hooks up with Lisbeth Salander, who is a computer hacker, and they investigate a murder from 40 years before. While they're investigating the murder, they find a very deep and disturbing family history. Next up, we have Lee Child, Killing Floor. Lee Child's very famous character, Jack Reacher, the ex-military guy, the cop. He arrives in town and there's a body. So naturally they accuse him and they lock him up. But the body count keeps going up, so they realise they haven't got the right guy. And thus begins the adventures of Jack Reacher. Now we have Richard Osman's The Thursday Murder Club. You think a retirement home is where people go to pasture. But in fact, Ron, Elizabeth, Joyce and Ibrahim meet up every Thursday to try and solve old crimes. But then there's a real life crime that happens within the fields of the retirement home, and they have to try and figure out who the murderer is. And now we have Norwegian writer Joe Nesbo. This is the first of his very, very popular series. So Harry Hole is a detective. He is sent to Australia because a Norwegian backpacker has been found dead. And when he gets there, he realises it's actually a serial killer. And the only person the murderer will talk to is Harry. Next up, we have Irish crime writer John Connolly. His first book, Every Dead Thing, about his famous character, Charlie Parker, who's a New York detective. Charlie is traumatized by the savage murder of his wife and daughter, and so he goes to uncover a killing, which turns out to be a serial killer who likes to deface his murder victims. So Charlie Parker is the man for the job. Fantastic read, Irish crime writer, brilliant. This is Robert Galbraith, also known as J.K. Rowling. J.K. decided to pack in Harry Potter and start writing crime, but she writes a very elegant type of crime. It's set in London. We've got Soho, we've got Mayfair, so you've got glamour, you've got grit, and it's J.K. Rowling's first in the Robert Galbraith series, which was extremely successful because she is a phenomenal writer. This is Jane Casey's The Burning. Amazing female detective. She's ambitious and she wants to get places. Her colleagues, male colleagues, think that her empathy makes her weak, but in fact, it's her hidden strength. Okay, brilliant Irish crime writer Patricia Gibney. This is The Missing Ones. Lottie Parker is a brilliant detective, and when there's a murder in the cathedral, she ends up becoming involved, but it ends up bringing her to the mother and baby home in her neighbourhood when she actually discovers that there's a connection to her own family, a very sinister connection. Next up, Peter James, Dead Simple. It's also an ITV drama now. This is actually really interesting because it's set over a stag night that goes horribly wrong. All the friends are dead and the groom has disappeared. The fiancée is distraught and wants to know where the hell her husband is. Can Roy Grace find him for her in 3 days? And finally, Jane Harper's The Dry. This is set in Australia during the worst drought, so the heat is unbearable. 3 members of the same family are brutally murdered. One of the victims is policeman Aaron Falk's best friend. He comes home for the funeral, but ends up getting wound up in trying to figure out who the murderer is. And there you have it, Eason's top 10 picks for crime novels to get you hooked.